The storm raged outside, rain hammering the desert floor. Eli, a weary cowboy, opened his cabin door and froze. An Apache woman stood drenched, her beauty fierce, her eyes begging for warmth. "Just one night," she whispered. But as dawn crept closer, Eli realized her request was not at all what he thought. The cabin walls shuddered under the weight of the storm. Wind howled through the cracks, rattling the lantern that cast weak light across the wooden floor. Eli Turner had spent enough nights alone on the frontier to know that storms like this could tear a man apart if he wasn't careful. He had just set down his rifle when a knock came. Sharp, desperate. His hand went instinctively to the weapon again, his pulse quickening. Out here, strangers rarely brought good news. Slowly, he opened the door. There she stood. Rainwater streamed from her braids. Her buckskin dress clung to her skin, and her chest rose with the effort of breathing. She looked at him with eyes that burned, not with fear, but with determination. "I need shelter," she said, her voice steady despite the storm. "Just one night." Eli hesitated. A dozen questions clawed at his mind. Who was she? Why had she come to his door, miles from the nearest settlement? And why did the storm outside suddenly feel less dangerous than the silence between them? Reluctantly, he stepped aside. "Come in." She entered without a word of thanks, shaking rain from her hair, her gaze scanning the small cabin as if weighing its worth. Eli closed the door, the wind slamming it shut with a final crack. For a moment, the only sound was the storm and the hiss of the lantern flame. Then Eli spoke. "You're Apache." Her eyes narrowed. "And you're a cowboy. Should I leave?" He shook his head, uneasy but curious. "No, but you should know. Folks around here don't always welcome company." A faint smile tugged at her lips, though it held no warmth. "I didn't come for welcome. I came for survival." Eli watched her settle by the fire, her figure outlined by the flickering glow. She spoke no more, but something in the way she carried herself told him this night would not end as simply as it began. And as thunder cracked overhead, Eli realized he hadn't just opened his door to a stranger. He had opened it to a storm far greater than the one outside. The fire cracked, its glow dancing across the walls of the small cabin. Eli leaned against the table, arms crossed, studying the woman who had stepped so suddenly into his world. She sat near the hearth, her eyes fixed on the flames, steam rising from her wet braids. She hadn't asked for food, hadn't spoken another word since declaring her need for shelter. Eli cleared his throat. "Storm will pass by morning. You can head back to your people then." Her eyes flicked to him, sharp and unreadable. "And if I don't?" He frowned. "Then folks'll start asking questions, questions you may not want to answer." She gave no reply, only pulled the damp shawl tighter around her shoulders. Eli felt a prickle at the back of his neck. Something about the way she carried herself, calm, almost too calm, didn't fit the picture of a woman simply fleeing the storm. "Name's Eli Turner," he said, more to break the silence than anything. "And you are?" Her gaze held his for a long moment before she answered. "Nayeli." The name lingered in the room, soft yet edged with strength. Eli nodded slowly, though it told him little. He poured 2 tin cups of coffee from the pot on the stove, sliding one across the table toward her. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she asked, "You live alone here?" The question made Eli's jaw tighten. He didn't like strangers knowing his business. "That's right." Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then you won't miss anyone if you don't make it to morning." The words landed like a blade. Eli's hand hovered near the revolver at his hip. "That's supposed to be a threat." Nayeli turned back to the fire, her expression unreadable. "A truth. The frontier eats men whole, some by storm, some by steel, some by the choices they make when a stranger knocks on their door." Eli's pulse quickened. He had let her in out of decency, maybe curiosity, but now unease coiled tight in his chest. She wasn't merely a wanderer. She was someone with purpose, though he couldn't yet see it. A gust of wind slammed against the shutters, rattling the cabin. The lantern flickered. Nayeli rose and moved closer to the door, her hand brushing the wood as if listening through it. "What are you waiting for?" Eli asked, voice low. She turned, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes. Wariness, but also calculation. "The storm's not the only thing out there tonight." Eli stiffened. "You're being followed." Nayeli didn't deny it. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Men, cowboys. They hunt me. If they find me here, they'll kill you too." Eli's stomach sank. The unease hardened into something colder, danger closing in on his doorstep. Why would they chase you through a storm? Her jaw tightened. Because I carry something they want, and they will burn this cabin to the ground to get it. Eli cursed under his breath, moving to check his rifle by the wall. He loaded the chamber with steady hands, though his heart pounded. He had offered her shelter, nothing more, but now he was tangled in a fight he hadn't chosen. Nayeli's voice cut through the crackle of the fire. You should have left me in the rain. Eli looked at her sharply. Maybe, but I didn't. He slid a shell into the rifle, snapping it shut. So now you're going to tell me what you've dragged to my door before it gets us both killed. She met his gaze, her eyes dark and steady. At dawn, I'll show you, but not before. Until then, if you want to live, you'll keep that rifle close. The wind howled, as if the desert itself confirmed her warning. Eli moved to the window, peering through the crack in the shutters. In the distance, faint against the rain, a lantern's glow bobbed in the darkness. Too steady to be the storm, too purposeful to be chance. His gut clenched. Strangers were coming. He turned back to the woman by his fire, her face calm despite the storm within and without. She had asked for one night of shelter, but it was already clear that night might cost him everything. Eli spots a lantern moving through the storm, proof that someone is indeed tracking Nayeli, and they are drawing closer to his cabin. The lantern's glow wavered in the storm, dipping behind sheets of rain, then rising again. Eli's gut clenched tighter with every flicker. Whoever was out there wasn't wandering. They were searching. He turned from the window. Nayeli still sat near the fire, her face calm, almost too calm. The storm carved shadows across her sharp features, making her look like a spirit pulled from the desert itself. Eli's voice was low, urgent. They're close. How many? Her eyes lifted to his, steady as stone. 3, maybe 4, but only one matters. The answer gnawed at him. And who the hell is that? She didn't flinch. A man who won't stop until I'm dead, or until what I carry is in his hands. Eli felt the weight of the rifle in his palms. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't asked for her, but now her fight was at his door. If they find this place, they'll bring bullets. You better pray I shoot straighter than they do. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. You will. A man who hesitates doesn't survive this land, and you're still here. The words struck him strange, half a challenge, half a strange kind of faith. He bit back a reply, focusing instead on the storm. The hoofbeats were faint now, muffled by the rain but growing clearer. Whoever they were cutting across the mesa fast. Eli moved to the table, blowing out the lantern to darken the cabin. Only the firelight flickered now, casting long shadows. He crouched low by the window, rifle at the ready. Nayeli remained still by the hearth, but her hands rested on a knife at her belt, her body coiled tight as a hunting cat. Minutes stretched into hours, though in truth only moments passed. The hoofbeats drew nearer, then slowed, crunching against the wet earth just beyond the cabin. Eli's heart hammered in his chest. Through the shutters, he caught glimpses. 3 riders, their coats slick with rain, their hats pulled low, lanterns swung from their saddles, casting distorted glows across their faces. He couldn't see details, but their movements were sharp, deliberate. These weren't travelers seeking shelter. They were hunters. One rider dismounted, his boots sinking into the mud with heavy thuds. He walked toward the cabin, the lantern casting his shadow long and thin across the ground. He stopped just outside the door. Turner. The man's voice was rough, carrying easily over the storm. We know she's inside. Open up, and maybe we'll leave you with your skin. Eli froze. He hadn't given his name. He hadn't said a damn word to anyone about tonight, yet this stranger knew him. Nayeli's voice cut sharp through the silence, low and certain. I told you, only one matters. Eli's jaw clenched. He tightened his grip on the rifle, steadying his breath. The man outside chuckled darkly. You gonna make me come in, cowboy? You really think you can stop what's coming? The door shook as a heavy boot slammed against it. Wood creaked but held. Eli looked back at Nayeli. What the hell did you bring here? She met his eyes without flinching. A truth too heavy for one man to carry, and too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. He wanted to press her, to demand answers, but the next slam against the door left no time. The hinges groaned, rattling against the frame. Eli shifted into position, rifle raised, voice low. Stay behind me. But Nayeli moved to the opposite side of the door, knife in hand, her body tense. No, I fight with you, not behind you. The door shook again, harder this time, splinters cracking loose. Rain pelted through the gaps as the men outside prepared to break it down. Eli's breath slowed, his finger brushing the trigger. He hadn't asked for this war, hadn't chosen this woman. But in that moment, with the storm screaming and death pounding at his door, he knew there was no turning back. The next strike would bring the door crashing in. And when it did, blood would follow. The men outside know Eli's name and are seconds away from breaking through the door. Eli and Nayeli stand ready, side by side, for the inevitable clash. The storm roared, but it was the pounding on the door that made Eli's blood run cold. The hinges groaned one last time, then gave way with a shriek. Wood splintered inward as the door slammed against the wall, and the first man burst through, revolver already raised. Eli fired before thought could slow him. The crack of the rifle split the storm, the bullet tearing through the intruder's shoulder. The man spun, crashed to the floor, his gun clattering from his hand. Two more figures surged through the doorway behind him, shadows slick with rain, lantern light glinting off steel. Nayeli moved like the storm itself. She darted low, knife flashing, catching one man across the thigh. He howled, staggering, swinging his pistol wildly. The shot blasted a hole through the wall inches above her head. She rolled aside, grabbing the man's arm, twisting until the bone cracked with a sickening snap. His weapon fell useless. Eli chambered another round, fired again. The second intruder jerked back, his coat blooming dark with blood, but he stayed on his feet, teeth clenched in rage. He lunged forward, slamming Eli against the table. The rifle slipped from Eli's hands, clattering across the floor. The two men grappled, fists crashing, chairs toppling, dishes shattering under their boots. Eli slammed his elbow into the man's jaw, but the intruder answered with a knee to his ribs. Pain exploded through Eli's chest, forcing the air from his lungs. Nayeli kicked the broken-armed cowboy into the fire's edge, flames licking at his coat. He shrieked, scrambling to douse the sparks, but she was already moving, her knife raised to defend Eli. The man grappling Eli drew a blade from his belt, swinging it down. Eli caught his wrist, muscles straining, the edge inches from his throat. Sweat and rain mixed on his brow as he forced the hand away. His teeth gritted in pure desperation. Then Nayeli struck. Her knife plunged into the man's side, sharp and sure. He gasped, eyes wide, the blade sinking deep. His grip faltered, and Eli shoved him back. The man staggered once, twice, then crumpled onto the cabin floor. Silence fell, broken only by the storm's howl and the crackle of the fire. Eli's chest heaved, ribs aching, his hands trembling. Two men writhed on the floor, one moaning in pain, the other unmoving. The third had fled back into the storm, boots pounding into the mud outside. But then came a sound that froze them both, slow, deliberate footsteps. The silhouette of a fourth man filled the doorway. He did not rush like the others. He stepped inside as though he owned the cabin, as though the chaos around him meant nothing. His coat was black, his hat pulled low, rain dripping from the brim. His hand rested casually on the revolver at his hip, but his eyes, cold, sharp, were locked on Nayeli. Eli's breath hitched. He knew instantly this was the man she had warned about, the one who mattered. The stranger's voice was calm, almost polite. "So you've run a long way, Nayeli. But you should know I don't tire easy." Nayeli's grip on her knife tightened, her voice low and steady. "Then maybe tonight's the night you learn." Eli bent to reach for his rifle, but the man's revolver cleared leather in a flash, the barrel aimed squarely at his chest. "Don't," the stranger said, his tone like iron. "This isn't your fight, Turner. Walk away now and maybe I'll let you keep breathing." Eli froze, fury boiling in his gut. "You come into my home, tear down my door, try to kill me, and you think I'll just walk away?" The man's smirk was thin, humorless. "I don't think I know, because men like you don't die for women like her." The words hung in the air, sharp as blades. Nayeli's jaw clenched, her eyes burning. Eli's heart pounded. He glanced at her, saw the fire in her eyes, the determination that had brought this storm to his door. He tightened his fists, his voice low. "Maybe you don't know men like me." The stranger cocked the hammer of his revolver, the sound loud in the cabin's silence. The storm screamed outside, rain lashing the windows. Inside, the fire popped, shadows dancing. 3 lives balanced on the edge of steel and will. The fourth man, the true threat, confronts them calmly, revolver drawn, daring Eli to back down while revealing he has hunted Nayeli for reasons yet unknown. The cabin was a cage of firelight and shadows. Eli stood stiff, chest heaving, every muscle taut as the stranger's revolver glinted in the dim glow. Nayeli moved closer to the hearth, her knife still in her hand, though both of them knew steel against steel was no match at this distance. The man in black tipped his hat back slightly, revealing eyes pale and merciless. "You've made me ride through 2 states, girl. Dust, rain, blood in my wake. And for what? A trinket not worth a damn to you." Nayeli's voice was flat, though her knuckles whitened around the knife. "Then why do you want it so badly?" The man smirked, eyes flicking briefly to Eli. "Because some things ain't about worth. They're about power. And power, cowboy, is the only law left on this frontier." Eli's jaw tightened. "You talk too much for a man pointing a gun at folks in their own home." The revolver shifted slightly toward him. "And you talk too much for a man who's one twitch from leaving this world." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the storm clawing at the roof. Eli's mind raced. He could feel the man's certainty, his control of the moment, but also something else, arrogance. A man who thought the outcome was already his, that arrogance might be the only opening. Nayeli's gaze never wavered. "You think power means taking what you want. That's why you'll never truly hold it." The man's laugh was low, cruel. "And what would you know of it? You're nothing but a girl who wandered too far from home. You think your people will remember you. They won't. But when I take what's mine, the whole territory will know my name." Her voice hardened. "Then they'll know you as a thief and a coward." His smile died. The revolver jerked slightly, anger flashing in his pale eyes. "Careful, girl. My patience is thinner than this storm's rain." Eli shifted subtly, inching closer to the rifle on the floor. The stranger noticed, swinging the barrel back toward him. "Don't. Not unless you want her to die first." Eli froze, but his eyes locked on Nayeli's. There was something in her gaze, a signal, faint but certain. She had a plan, though it might damn them both. The man stepped forward, boots heavy on the wooden floor. "Put the knife down," he ordered Nayeli. "Slow, on the ground." She didn't move. "You'll kill us whether I drop it or not." "That depends on the cowboy." His smirk returned, thin and sharp. "You, Turner, you don't know what she's carrying, do you? What she's dragged into your life? Tell me something. Do you really think she knocked on your door by chance?" Eli's chest tightened. The thought had clawed at him since the moment she arrived, but hearing it aloud felt like poison. He shot Nayeli a hard look, demanding an answer without words. Her lips pressed into a line. She said nothing. The stranger chuckled. "That silence tells you all you need. She brought trouble here because you looked like the kind of fool who'd open the door. She's using you. And you're too blind to see it." Eli's grip tightened around nothing, fury and doubt warring in his chest. He wanted to shout, to demand the truth, but his instinct screamed not to fracture now, not with a gun inches from ending them. Nayeli finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Believe him if you want, but understand this, if you give me up, he won't stop with me. Men like him never stop." The words struck Eli like a hammer. His gut told him she was right. He had seen men like this before, predators who devoured land, people, anything they could claim. Giving her up would not save him. It would only delay his own destruction. The stranger's patience snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing Nayeli by the arm, yanking her roughly toward the door. "Enough games. You're coming with me." Her knife flashed, but he twisted her wrist with brutal precision, the blade clattering to the floor. She gasped in pain as he shoved her ahead, revolver pressed to her ribs. Eli's fists clenched. His rifle was still on the ground, just out of reach. He had one chance, wait for the perfect moment, or lose her forever. The storm screamed louder, the wind slamming against the cabin as though the desert itself demanded blood. The revolver's barrel dug into Nayeli's ribs as the stranger shoved her toward the open doorway, rain slashing in sideways with the wind. Eli's blood pounded in his ears. He could see the pain twisting across her face, but her eyes, dark, defiant, never pleaded. She wasn't the kind to beg. Eli's mind raced. His rifle lay just feet away, but the man in black kept him pinned with that revolver. One wrong move and it would all be over. The stranger sneered. "You had your chance, Turner. Could have walked away. Instead, you'll spend the rest of your life remembering how you lost her right in front of your eyes." He dragged Nayeli another step toward the storm. Eli's fists tightened. He knew waiting meant losing, but rushing meant death. He needed a spark, a distraction. Nayeli gave it to him. As the stranger jerked her forward, she twisted suddenly, driving her heel down on his instep. The man cursed, staggering just enough for the revolver to waver. Eli lunged. He dove across the cabin floor, snatching up his rifle in one swift motion. The butt crashed against the stranger's wrist, sending the revolver spinning into the dark. Nayeli ripped free, stumbling to the side as the man roared in fury. The fight turned savage in an instant. Eli swung the rifle like a club, catching the man across the jaw. Blood sprayed, but the outlaw barely faltered, slamming Eli back against the table with brute force. Wood splintered, dishes shattered. The cabin shuddered under their struggle. Nayeli scrambled for her fallen knife, but the stranger's fist struck her across the cheek, sending her sprawling. He grabbed Eli by the throat, squeezing until black spots danced in his vision. "Stupid cowboy," the man hissed. "You don't even know what you're protecting." Nayeli's voice rasped from the floor, hoarse but burning. "Tell him, then. Tell him why you've hunted me across 2 states." The man's pale eyes flicked down to her, then back to Eli, his lips twisted into a grin. "She carries proof, a ledger. Names, deals, bribes, all of it written in her father's hand. Judges, sheriffs, ranchers, half this territory bought and paid for. I kill her, it vanishes. I take it, I own them all." Eli's pulse thundered. A ledger, corruption written plain, and she'd been running with it this whole time. The outlaw pressed harder, his voice a growl. "So tell me, Turner, you want to die for her secrets?" Eli's vision blurred, but fury cut through the haze. His hands found the rifle still clutched in his grip. With a desperate surge, he slammed the stock into the outlaw's ribs, breaking free of his chokehold. Gasping for air, Eli shoved him back, leveling the barrel at his chest. "Try me," Eli rasped. The man laughed, blood dripping from his split lip. "You ain't got the guts." Nayeli's voice cut through like a blade. "Eli," her eyes locked on his, fierce, unyielding. "Don't let him take it. Don't let him take me." The outlaw lunged. Eli fired. The shot thundered, deafening in the small cabin. The man jerked back, clutching his shoulder, fury flashing across his face. But instead of falling, he staggered to the doorway, rain pouring over him, and spat blood into the mud. "This ain't over," he growled. "Not by a long shot." He vanished into the storm, his footsteps swallowed by the night. Silence fell, heavy and jagged. Eli lowered the rifle, his chest heaving. Nayeli pushed herself up from the floor, a bruise blooming on her cheek, her knife still trembling in her grip. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Eli's voice broke the quiet. "A ledger. All this blood, all this chasing. For that?" Nayeli nodded, her expression grim. "My father died for it. They want it buried. If it disappears, they own everything." Eli sank into the nearest chair, the rifle across his knees. He shook his head, disbelief and anger tangling in his chest. "And you brought it here. To me." Her eyes softened, though her words were sharp. "I brought it to the first man I thought might not sell me out. The first man I thought might fight." Eli stared at her, stormlight flickering through the broken door. He wanted to curse her for dragging him into this, for tearing his quiet life apart. But the truth was plain in her eyes. She hadn't come for chance. She had come for hope. Outside, thunder rolled across the mesa. The outlaw was gone, but he would return. And when he did, Eli knew the storm inside his cabin had only just begun. The outlaw escapes into the storm, wounded but alive, and Eli learns the truth. Nayeli carries a ledger of corruption that powerful men would kill to bury. Rain still poured through the shattered doorway, pooling across the cabin floor. Eli shoved a chair against the frame, more to mark the threshold than to bar it. The storm would do nothing to stop the man in black if he returned. His ribs ached with every breath, but it was the weight in his chest, not the pain, that pressed hardest. Nayeli sat by the hearth again, bruised, bloodied, but unshaken. She drew the knife across a whetstone, the slow scrape filling the silence. Sparks leapt in the firelight. Eli finally spoke, his voice low, harsh. "You should have told me." Her eyes flicked up. "Would you have opened the door if I had?" The question stabbed deeper than her blade. He wanted to say yes, but honesty strangled the word before it formed. He ground his teeth, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "You brought a war to my doorstep. Men died here tonight. My life's never gonna be the same, and all because of some book filled with names." Nayeli's gaze didn't waver. "Not names. Power. That ledger holds every deal they made, every drop of blood they bought. Ranchers stealing land, judges selling sentences, sheriffs turning a blind eye. If I bury it, they win forever. If I deliver it, maybe the world changes." Eli let out a bitter laugh. "The world don't change out here. Men like that have been running things since before you or me were born." "Then let it change one piece at a time," she shot back. "One name at a time. That ledger isn't just paper, it's a noose. If I live long enough to tighten it around their necks." The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. Eli studied her through the shifting glow. She wasn't just stubborn. She believed it, believed enough to carry death on her heels across miles of desert. He sighed, rubbing the bruise swelling along his jaw. "So what now? He's still out there. He knows where I live and he knows me by name. You think he'll just give up and ride home?" Nayeli's hand stilled on the knife. "No, he'll come again. With more men, more guns. He won't stop until the ledger's in his hands or I'm in the ground." Eli stood, pacing the cabin like a caged wolf. "Then maybe you shouldn't be here when he does. Maybe you keep moving, keep running. I don't need to be dragged deeper into your fight." Her jaw tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "You think running works? I've run for weeks. He always finds me, and now he knows you. Whether I leave or stay, you're already in this." The words hit like truth hammered into iron. Eli stopped pacing, staring at her with a mix of fury and resignation. She was right. By opening that door, he had stepped into a storm, and storms didn't end just because a man wanted them to. The firelight caught the bruise blooming on her cheek. The dirt streaked across her skin. She looked fragile in that moment, but there was steel under it, sharp as the knife in her hand. Eli sat across from her, voice softer. "What's in that ledger? Where is it now?" She hesitated, then reached into the folds of her shawl. From a hidden pocket she pulled a small leather-bound book, edges frayed, pages swollen from rain. She laid it gently on the table between them, as if it might explode. Eli stared. It looked ordinary, like any rancher's account book, but the weight in her eyes told him it was anything but. He flipped it open. Inside, neat handwriting filled the pages, names, dates, transactions, bribes recorded like debts, sheriffs, landowners, even a federal agent or two. His stomach turned. It was all there, plain as day, a map of corruption so deep it stank off the page. He snapped it shut, shoving it back toward her. "If this is true, it's a death warrant. For you, for me, for anyone who touches it." Her hand covered the book, steady. "Or it's a key. If I can get it to someone who still believes in law, maybe it changes something. Maybe it saves someone else's life, even if it costs mine." Eli leaned back, staring at the ceiling beams. Thunder rolled overhead, deep and distant. "You're asking me to choose between my life and your cause, and I don't even know if I believe in your cause." Nayeli's eyes softened. "I didn't ask you to choose. You already did when you let me in." The words cut deep. He looked at her again, at the bruises, the stubborn fire, the quiet strength, and for the first time, he understood. She hadn't chosen him by chance. She'd chosen him because he looked like a man who wouldn't turn away, even when he wanted to. Outside, the storm began to ease, the rain tapering into steady drizzle, but the danger hadn't passed. It had only gathered, waiting for dawn. Nayeli reveals the ledger at last, placing Eli in the center of her fight. He realizes there is no escape. By opening his door, he has already chosen her cause, whether he admits it or not. The storm had passed, leaving the land raw and broken. Puddles gleamed silver in the dawn light, steam rising where the first sun touched the wet earth. The desert always swallowed its scars fast, but inside Eli's cabin the wreckage remained. Splintered door, shattered dishes, blood staining the wooden floorboards. Eli leaned against the table, weary eyes scanning the horizon through the open frame where a door used to be. The silence after the storm was worse than the thunder. It meant the world was holding its breath. Nayeli moved quietly, wrapping strips of cloth around her bruised wrist. She looked at him once, then at the ledger resting on the table between them. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Eli broke the silence. "He'll come back. Men like him don't lick their wounds and ride off." Nayeli's voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed fatigue. "He won't come back alone. He'll bring more men, men who owe him or fear him. This time, he won't make the mistake of underestimating you." Eli's jaw tightened. He had lived alone for years, choosing the quiet over conflict, the open land over loyalty. But now conflict had found him, and there was no space left to hide. Hoofbeats shattered the morning calm. Eli's head snapped up. On the ridge beyond the cabin, silhouettes appeared, 5, 6, maybe more. Riders, their figures dark against the rising sun. Rifles glinted faintly in the light. They didn't waste time, Eli muttered, grabbing his rifle. Naley moved to the window, eyes narrowing. That's not just hired guns, that's half his crew. He means to finish this today. The riders slowed, fanning out across the ridge, their formation deliberate. They weren't storming yet. They were watching, waiting, measuring. The man in black was among them. Eli could see his posture, calm and commanding, like a wolf circling before the strike. "Why wait?" Eli asked under his breath. Nayeli's lips pressed thin. "Because he wants us to feel it, wants us to know there's no escape before he moves." Eli checked the rifle, loaded and ready. "We can't hold this cabin against that many. It's a coffin." She turned to him, eyes fierce. "Then we don't hold it. We move before they do." He blinked. "Move where? They've got us surrounded." "Not surrounded." Her gaze flicked to the back of the cabin. "Not yet." They gathered what they could in moments. Rifle and knife, the ledger wrapped tight in oilcloth, a pouch of ammunition. Nayeli tied the bundle against her back with steady hands, though her movements were strained from bruises. Eli kicked open the rear window, the wood splintering loud in the tense morning. He glanced once more toward the ridge. The riders hadn't moved, but he felt their eyes like a weight between his shoulders. "Go," he whispered. They slipped into the desert brush, boots sinking in wet earth, the air sharp with the scent of rain. Every step felt like a drumbeat, the silence too loud. Minutes stretched as they moved, crouched low, weaving between boulders and scrub. The ridge loomed behind them, and for a moment Eli thought they might actually slip away. Then came the whistle, sharp, shrill, carried far across the desert. Hoofbeats thundered in answer. The riders split, half peeling off toward the cabin, the others turning to sweep the land where Eli and Nayeli fled. "They know," Eli growled, pulling her forward. Shots cracked. Bullets hissed through the air, snapping branches, kicking dirt into their faces. They dove behind a rocky outcrop, hearts hammering. Eli returned fire, the rifle's kick bruising his shoulder. One rider reeled in the saddle, tumbling hard into the mud. The others fanned wider, circling like wolves. Nayeli's breathing was harsh, her knife trembling in her grip. She clutched the ledger tight against her chest. "They'll run us down before we reach cover." Eli's eyes darted across the landscape. A narrow arroyo cut through the mesa ahead, its mouth half hidden by brush. He grabbed her wrist. "There. Move." They sprinted, boots pounding, bullets chasing. The ground fell away beneath them as they slid into the arroyo, rocks scraping their skin. The walls rose around them, offering shelter, but also trapping them if the riders followed. Eli pressed his back against the stone, chest heaving. He could hear the hoofbeats above, circling, searching. For the moment, the arroyo hid them, but it wouldn't last. Nayeli leaned close, her whisper fierce. "He won't stop, Eli. Not until he's holding this ledger, or holding my corpse." Eli looked at her, the dirt streaked across her face, the fire unbroken in her eyes. He realized then that she was right. Running wouldn't be enough. Hiding wouldn't be enough. The fight had to end one way or another. Above them, the man in black's voice echoed across the rocks, calm, deliberate. "Turner, you can't keep her. You can't keep the book. Hand them both over, and maybe I let you live. Refuse, and I bury you where you stand." The sound carried cruel and certain. Nayeli's fingers tightened on the ledger. Eli raised his rifle, eyes narrowing. He muttered, more to himself than her. "Then we don't run anymore." The arroyo was narrow, its walls slick from the storm, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth. Eli crouched low, rifle tight in his grip, listening to the hoofbeats echo above. Nayeli pressed against the stone beside him, her breathing quick but steady, the ledger bound tight against her chest. The man in black's voice carried again, calm as ever. "I'll give you one chance, Turner. One chance to walk away. Hand her over. Hand me the book, and you live to see tomorrow." Eli's teeth clenched. He shouted back, his voice rough and unyielding. "You think I'd believe a word from your mouth? You've already tried to kill me twice in my own home." A pause, then a laugh sharp as broken glass. "Then you've chosen the hard way." The order barked from above. "Spread out! Smoke them out!" Riders dismounted, boots pounding along the ridge. Eli glimpsed shadows moving against the rising sun, rifles glinting as men crept toward the arroyo's edge. He pulled Nayeli down as the first shots cracked, bullets sparking off stone. Dust rained from the cliff walls, sharp fragments stinging their faces. Eli returned fire, his rifle booming, the shot catching one figure who toppled with a scream. "Stay low," he hissed. Nayeli's knife was useless at this distance, but her eyes scanned the arroyo floor, sharp and searching. She spotted loose stones, jagged and heavy, scattered from the storm. She grabbed one, hurling it upward with fierce precision. It struck a rifleman's hand, sending his weapon clattering to the rocks below. The man cursed, clutching his wrist, and Eli finished him with a shot. The fight intensified. More bullets rained down, the air thick with the hiss of lead. Eli and Nayeli scrambled deeper into the arroyo, using the winding path as cover, but the riders were relentless, climbing down after them, firing from above. Eli ducked behind a boulder, shoving fresh rounds into his rifle. "They've got numbers. We don't—" Nayeli's eyes blazed. "Then we use what they don't have." He frowned. "What's that?" Her voice was sharp as steel. "Fear." As if to prove her point, she darted from cover, sprinting to another rock as bullets whined past. She shouted, her voice echoing through the arroyo. "You hunt me because you're afraid. Afraid of the truth written in these pages. Afraid the world will see you for what you are. Liars, thieves, cowards." The men snarled back, their fire growing frantic, less precise. Eli seized the moment, steadying his aim. 2 more shots rang out, dropping one man clean, sending another scrambling for cover. But then the pale-eyed stranger himself appeared at the rim of the arroyo, calm amid the chaos. His revolver gleamed in the sun as he fired, the bullet sparking inches from Eli's head. Eli ducked, heart hammering. "He's here." Nayeli's gaze snapped upward. Their eyes met, the predator and the prey. His lips curled in a cruel smile. "You can't hide from me, girl. Not here, not anywhere." She raised her chin, defiant. "Then come down and take me." For a moment, silence. Then the man in black holstered his revolver and began climbing down the rocks with the precision of a panther. His men covered him with gunfire, pinning Eli and Nayeli against the stone. Eli cursed under his breath, firing back to keep the others at bay. "He's coming for you." Nayeli's grip tightened on the ledger. "No, he's coming for both of us." The outlaw reached the arroyo floor, boots sinking in the mud, revolver sliding free again. His pale eyes gleamed as he stepped forward, calm amid the storm of battle. "End of the trail, Turner. End of the road, Nayeli. Hand me the book and maybe I'll make it quick." Eli leveled his rifle, finger on the trigger. "You'll get it over my corpse." The man smirked. "That's the plan." Before either could fire, a new crack split the air. Not Eli's rifle, not the outlaw's revolver, but a shot from the ridge. One of the outlaw's men cried out, tumbling lifeless into the arroyo. Both Eli and Nayeli turned, stunned. On the far rim stood Boone, the drifter Eli had once traded horses with, rifle smoking, eyes locked on the fight below. The outlaw snarled, his calm cracking for the first time. "Damn fool, sticking his nose where it doesn't belong." Eli's heart surged. They weren't alone anymore, but Boone's voice carried sharp and grim. "Thought you could handle this mess alone, Turner. Guess I was wrong. Let's finish it before the whole damn desert burns." The battle was far from over, but now the odds had shifted. The outlaw descends into the arroyo for a final confrontation, but Boone's unexpected arrival with a rifle shot changes the fight. Dust swirled in the arroyo as Boone's shot echoed off the stone walls. The outlaw's men scrambled, some ducking for cover, others firing wildly toward the ridge. Eli seized the distraction, his rifle cracking twice more. One rider fell, another cursed and staggered back, blood soaking his sleeve. The man in black didn't flinch. He moved forward with slow, measured steps, revolver steady, his pale eyes fixed on Nayeli. So the cowboy found himself a friend. "Doesn't matter, I'll kill them both before this is done," Boone shouted from above, his voice carrying clear. "You picked the wrong canyon, friend." Another shot split the air, grazing the outlaw's hat clean off his head. It spun into the mud, the first crack in his impenetrable calm. Nayeli clutched the ledger close, her knife trembling in her hand. Eli dropped beside her, reloading. "Boone'll keep their heads down, but that one—" He nodded at the outlaw advancing. "He's mine." She grabbed his arm, eyes blazing. "No, Eli, he's not after you. He's after me. If anyone ends him, it should be me." Eli's jaw tightened. There was no time to argue. The outlaw raised his revolver, firing. The bullet screamed past, splintering stone inches from Nayeli's face. She ducked, heart hammering, As Eli returned fire, the outlaw sidestepped the shot, unfazed, his boots sinking deeper into the mud as he closed the distance. Every mile you ran, Nayeli, I was right behind. Every night you thought you were safe, I was watching. You can't kill a shadow. Her voice cut through the chaos, fierce and unyielding. Then today, the shadow dies. She hurled the knife. The blade spun true, slicing across his forearm. He grunted, revolver jerking, blood streaking his sleeve. For the first time, he stumbled, rage flashing in his pale eyes. Eli lunged, tackling him hard into the mud. The two men crashed down, fists flying, boots kicking. The revolver knocked free. They grappled in the dirt, grunting with the effort, each strike harder than the last. The outlaw fought like a man possessed, brutal and efficient. Eli fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Boone's shots cracked above, holding off the remaining riders, but Eli barely heard them. His world had narrowed to fists, blood, and the pale-eyed demon trying to crush the life out of him. The outlaw's hands locked on Eli's throat, pressing down with merciless strength. Spots danced before Eli's eyes, his chest burning for air. "Say goodbye, Turner," the outlaw hissed. Then Nayeli's scream split the air. "No!" She dove, snatching Eli's rifle from the ground. With trembling hands, she jammed the barrel against the outlaw's ribs and pulled the trigger. The blast was deafening in the confined arroyo. The outlaw's body jerked violently, blood spraying across the mud. His grip slackened, his eyes wide with shock. He slumped sideways, gasping. The fight finally drained from his limbs. Eli rolled free, coughing, dragging in desperate breaths. Nayeli dropped beside him, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. Eli, but the outlaw wasn't dead yet. He groaned, staggering to his knees, blood pouring from the wound. His pale eyes locked on Nayeli one last time, filled with hate that burned even as life drained away. "You think killing me changes anything?" he rasped. "Others will come. That book will bury you." Nayeli stared back, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Then let it bury me. But it will bury you first." She shoved him hard. His body toppled back into the mud, still at last. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by Boone's last shots above, as the remaining riders scattered into the desert. The echoes faded, leaving only the ragged sound of Eli's breathing and Nayeli's soft, choked sobs. Boone climbed down into the arroyo, rifle slung across his back. He looked at the corpse, then at the two of them. "Well, that's one hell of a mess." Eli managed a bitter laugh, his voice hoarse. "You've got a talent for showing up late." Boone's eyes flicked to Nayeli, then the ledger clutched against her chest. "So that's what all this blood's for?" She nodded, silent, her expression a mix of sorrow and defiance. Boone sighed. "Then you two just painted targets on your backs bigger than Texas." Eli looked at Nayeli, then at the body in the mud. He knew Boone was right. Killing the outlaw ended one fight, but the ledger meant more enemies, more battles, and the war was only beginning. The outlaw falls, killed by Nayeli's desperate shot, but Boone warns that the ledger has made them enemies of powerful men, and this fight is far from over. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last wisps of storm. The arroyo stank of blood and gunpowder, its floor littered with broken rifles and the still bodies of the men who hadn't escaped. Boone kicked dirt over the outlaw's pale-eyed corpse, his expression grim. "That man won't trouble you anymore," he muttered. "But the men behind him, they'll send worse." Nayeli wiped the blood from her cheek with the back of her hand, her knuckles raw. "He was right about one thing, they won't stop. As long as this book exists, they'll keep coming." She tightened her grip on the leather bundle against her chest. "That's why we have to use it before they bury us with it." Eli leaned against the rock wall, ribs throbbing, breath still ragged. He looked at Boone, then at Nayeli. "Use it how? You think some sheriff's gonna stand up against the names in there? Half of them are sheriffs." Boone spat into the mud. "He's not wrong. Too many badges bought and sold out here. Law's a game men like him already rigged." Nayeli's eyes burned. "Then we find the one man they haven't bought. There's a judge in Santa Fe. My father trusted him before he died. If we can get the ledger into his hands, it might mean trials, exposures, something real." Boone chuckled bitterly. "Santa Fe's 2 weeks' ride, with half the desert in between. You won't make it without every bounty hunter west of the Rio Grande sniffing your trail." "Then we don't ride straight," she countered. "We move like ghosts. Cover tracks. Split if we must." Eli pushed himself off the wall, wincing but standing tall. "Ghosts don't bleed. We do. And with me shot up, and you bruised half to hell, we won't last 3 days if they come hard." Boone eyed him, then smirked faintly. "Always were a pessimist, Turner. Lucky for you, I came prepared." He whistled sharp, and from the ridge above came the sound of hooves. Boone's horse trotted down the narrow path, saddlebags bulging with supplies. He patted its flank. "Been riding with one eye on you for days, Turner. Knew trouble was brewing when I heard whispers about a girl with a book men would kill for." Eli's brow furrowed. "So you knew?" Boone shrugged. "Enough to know I'd rather be beside you than against you, and enough to know this ledger's worth more than land or gold. It's worth dying for." Nayeli studied him carefully. "You'd die for it?" Boone's smirk faded. "I'd die to make sure men like him." He kicked at the outlaw's corpse. "Don't keep ruling the world while good folk starve. Whether that book's the key or just a spark, I'll ride for it." Silence hung for a moment, heavy but steady. For the first time, Eli felt something shift. Boone's words, Nayeli's fire. It all weighed against the fear grinding in his chest. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we ride, but we ride smart." Boone grinned. "That's the Turner I know." They scavenged what they could. Ammo from the dead, food from saddlebags, an extra horse freed from the outlaw's men. By noon, the three of them rode hard across the open desert, the sun merciless on their backs. Nayeli rode in the middle, the ledger tied securely beneath her shawl. Boone scouted ahead, eyes sharp on the horizon. Eli lagged just behind, ribs aching but hands steady on the reins. Hours stretched into silence broken only by hoofbeats. The land rolled endless, scrub and rock shimmering under heat. At dusk, they made camp in a narrow canyon hidden from the trail. Boone built a fire low and smokeless. Eli kept watch with rifle across his knees, and Nayeli sat opposite them, her fingers tracing the edges of the ledger as if drawing strength from its weight. Eli's voice broke the quiet. "That book, it's already cost blood. How many more before it does any good?" Nayeli met his eyes, steady. "As many as it takes. My father died because he believed truth still mattered. If I bury this, his death is nothing. If I carry it through, maybe his sacrifice means something." Boone grunted. "Truth's a dangerous weapon, more dangerous than a bullet. Men will kill to keep it buried. But sometimes, when it gets out, it cuts deeper than steel." Eli stared into the fire, its embers glowing red. He had lived his life avoiding battles, walking the line between survival and surrender. Now there was no line left, just the road ahead, and the choice already made when he opened his cabin door. In the distance, coyotes howled under the rising moon. The desert stretched endless and merciless around them, but in that small circle of firelight, 3 riders had formed an alliance born not of chance, but of blood. The desert stretched endless under the burning sun, each mile heavier than the last. Eli rode with his hat low, ribs aching, eyes sharp on the horizon. Boone scouted ahead, his rifle slung across his back, while Nayeli rode between them, the ledger hidden beneath her shawl. The silence of the ride was tense, broken only by the creak of saddles and the steady rhythm of hooves. They rode hard for 2 days, sleeping only in short bursts, never lighting a fire, never lingering long. Each night, the stars blazed cruelly above them, and each night Eli swore he could hear hoofbeats echoing faint in the distance, phantoms, or worse, the hunters closing in. On the 3rd morning, Boone returned from scouting with his jaw set hard. "They're behind us. 6 riders, closing fast." Nayeli's grip tightened on the reins. "Already?" Boone nodded. "We've been leaving tracks, even careful as we've been. Storm made mud, mud made trails, and they're following." Eli cursed under his breath. "We can't outrun them straight to Santa Fe. We'll need to cut wide, lose them in the canyons." Boone shook his head. "Won't matter. Men that hungry don't quit easy. Only way to stop a wolf is to break its teeth." They pressed on, but the sense of pursuit grew thicker with each mile. By evening, they reached a narrow canyon where the sun died in crimson streaks. They made camp in the shadows, too weary to push further. Boone kept watch while Eli and Nayeli sat together, backs against the stone. Her voice was quiet. "Do you trust him?" Eli glanced at Boone's silhouette on the ridge. "Boone, he saved my hide more times than I can count. But men change when gold or power's on the table." She held the ledger tighter. "If he takes it, he won't," Eli said, more firmly than he felt. At dawn, the riders struck. Gunfire shattered the canyon's silence. Bullets sparked off stone, horses screamed, and the hunters poured in from both ends. Boone shouted a warning, firing from his perch, dropping one of the attackers clean from his saddle. Eli pulled Nayeli down behind a boulder, his rifle bucking as he returned fire. The canyon became a killing ground. Dust and smoke choked the air, echoing with the roar of rifles. One hunter crashed close, knife drawn, but Nayeli drove her blade into his chest, her cry raw with fury. Eli spun, dropping another with a shot to the chest. Boone fired from above, his rifle precise, ruthless. The hunters faltered, retreating under the crossfire. When the dust cleared, only silence remained. 3 bodies sprawled in the dirt. The others had fled into the desert, their hoofbeats fading. Eli's chest heaved as he lowered his rifle. Boone climbed down from the ridge, face grim, eyes scanning the corpses. He crouched by one, pulling a badge from the man's coat. Eli frowned. "A deputy." Boone tossed the badge into the dirt. "Bought law. Paid to hunt her down. Told you, Turner, this ledger's bigger than outlaws. It's the law itself, chasing us now." Nayeli's face paled. "If they've sent deputies, Santa Fe may not be safe." Boone's eyes flicked to her, then to Eli. "Nothing's safe. Question is, who do we trust less, the hunters behind us or the men waiting ahead?" Eli said nothing, but his gut twisted. The ledger was a noose around all their necks. That night, as they camped far from the canyon, Boone sat apart, sharpening his knife. Nayeli watched him, her eyes narrow. She whispered to Eli, "He could take it from us. Hand it over. Earn himself a pardon and a fortune." Eli shook his head. "Boone's many things, but he's not a traitor." Still, doubt gnawed at him. Boone was restless, his gaze lingering on the ledger longer than Eli liked. At dawn, the doubt turned to fire. Nayeli woke to find Boone standing over her, the ledger in his hands. Eli jolted awake, rifle already raised. "Boone." Boone's face was carved from stone. "You don't understand, Turner. This book will kill us all before it saves anyone, but if I hand it over, maybe we buy our lives back." Nayeli scrambled to her feet, fury blazing. "You'd sell the truth, sell my father's blood. You're no better than them." Eli's finger tightened on the trigger, his voice low, trembling with anger. "Put it down, Boone. Now!" The canyon wind howled through the silence, the 3 of them locked in a triangle of steel, trust, and betrayal. The morning light cut harsh through the canyon, illuminating Boone's weathered face as he gripped the ledger tight. His boots were planted firm in the sand, rifle slung across his back, knife at his belt. Eli stood opposite him, rifle leveled, jaw clenched. Between them, Nayeli's chest heaved, fury blazing in her eyes. "Boone," Eli said, voice low and steady, though his finger trembled on the trigger. "We've ridden through fire together. Don't make me aim at you." Boone's eyes didn't soften. "And I've pulled you out of more graves than I can count, Turner. But this," he lifted the ledger, "this ain't a fight we can win. You think dragging this book to some judge will fix the world? It'll just get us killed quicker." Nayeli stepped forward, her voice sharp as steel. "My father died to protect that ledger. Men bled and burned because of it. And you'd throw it back into the hands of the devils who wrote it." Boone's jaw tightened. "Girl, I've seen more devils in my life than you can dream. You don't beat them by playing their game. You beat them by surviving." Eli's voice cracked like a whip. "Surviving ain't living, Boone. You taught me that once." For a moment, silence. The canyon wind whispered across the sand, carrying dust between them. Boone's eyes flickered, a flash of something. Regret, maybe. But it was gone in an instant, buried under hard resolve. "I hand this ledger over," Boone said. "They call off their dogs. You and me, Turner, we can ride free again. No more waking to hoofbeats at night. No more blood on our hands for a fight that ain't ours." Eli's grip tightened on the rifle. "It is ours. The moment they came to my door, the moment Nayeli chose me instead of running. This ledger ain't just names on paper. It's proof. And proof's the only bullet they don't see coming." Boone's face hardened. "Then you've chosen your grave." He drew his knife, dropping the ledger into his other hand. Nayeli gasped, stepping between them, arms spread. "Stop! If you want it, Boone, you'll cut me down first. And if you do, then you prove every name in that book right. You prove you're just another man who sells truth for survival." Her voice rang across the canyon, fierce and unbreakable. Boone froze, the knife hovering in his hand, his eyes locked on hers. and something in his posture faltered. Eli lowered his rifle slightly, his voice softer now. "Boone, you've carried me through battles, patched me up, stood at my side when no one else would. Don't let this be the line where you turn outlaw in your own soul." The knife wavered. Boone's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His gaze flicked from Nayeli to Eli, to the ledger in his hand. For a long, agonizing moment, the canyon held its breath. Then the sound of hoofbeats shattered it. Riders appeared at the canyon's mouth, more hunters, a dozen at least, rifles gleaming in the sun. Their leader raised a pistol high, voice booming. "Hand it over, and maybe we'll leave you breathing." Boone's eyes widened. He looked at Eli, then at the riders, then back at the ledger. His voice was hoarse. "Damn it, Turner, you might be right. They'll never stop unless someone burns them down with their own fire." With a roar, he hurled the ledger to Eli, spinning on his heel to face the riders. His rifle cracked, dropping the first man from his saddle. Chaos erupted. Gunfire thundered through the canyon, echoing off stone. Eli caught the ledger, shoving it under his coat, then raised his rifle and fired beside Boone. Nayeli grabbed her knife, slashing at a rider who charged too close. The canyon became a storm of dust, blood and fire. Boone fought like a man possessed, each shot tearing through the line, each curse spat with bitter defiance. But numbers pressed hard. A bullet caught him in the side. He staggered, but fired again, dropping another rider before falling to his knees. "Boone," Eli shouted, cutting down a gunman who tried to rush him. Boone looked up, blood streaking his lips, a grin twisted across his face. "Don't waste it, Turner. Don't waste her father's blood." Then he rose one last time, rifle blazing, drawing the hunter's fire onto himself. Bullets tore through him, each one slamming like thunder, until his body crumpled to the dust. Eli roared, his fury boiling into his rifle. Nayeli screamed, hurling her knife into the chest of the man who fired the last shot. Together, they drove the hunters back, the canyon littered with the dead and dying. When the smoke cleared, only silence remained. Boone's body lay still, the ledger heavy in Eli's coat, and Nayeli knelt beside him, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. Eli rested a hand on Boone's shoulder, his voice breaking. "You chose right, old friend. You chose right." The canyon wind carried his words away, leaving only the weight of loss, and the certainty that Boone's sacrifice had bought them another chance. The canyon lay quiet after the smoke cleared, the last echoes of gunfire fading into the desert wind. The bodies of Boone's killers sprawled across the sand, their blood soaking into the earth that had claimed so many before them. Eli and Nayeli knelt by Boone's side, his face pale, his rifle still gripped tight in his lifeless hands. Nayeli wiped the dirt from his brow, her voice breaking. "He saved us." Eli's jaw tightened. His chest ached, not just from bruises and wounds, but from the hollowness Boone's absence carved inside him. He always did, right until the end. They buried him where he fell, piling stones into a cairn. Eli carved his friend's name into the rock with the point of his knife, rough, uneven, but lasting. When the final stone was placed, he stood in silence, hat pressed to his chest. Nayeli laid the ledger atop the cairn for a moment, her hand lingering on its cracked leather cover. Then she lifted it again, tucking it under her shawl. "He gave his life so this would reach Santa Fe. We can't waste it." Eli looked at her, weary but resolute. "Then we ride. For Boone, for your father, for every name in that book." They left the canyon at dawn, the desert opening before them in endless waves of sand and stone. Each mile was heavier than the last, the ledger a constant weight against Eli's ribs. They rode in silence for long stretches, broken only by the cry of hawks overhead and the distant thunder of rivers swollen by storm. Nayeli spoke little, her eyes distant, but her resolve never faltered. Every time Eli's doubt surfaced, every time he thought of turning back, of burning the ledger to save their lives, he saw her father's blood in her eyes, Boone's sacrifice in her silence, and he pressed on. At night they camped under the stars, sharing cold rations and the thin comfort of a fireless camp. The land was merciless, but in those quiet hours something shifted. Eli found himself watching Nayeli, not just as the woman who had dragged him into this fight, but as the reason he hadn't walked away. Her strength, her stubborn defiance, gave him something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. On the sixth day, the spires of Santa Fe rose in the distance, their outlines shimmering in the heat. Relief swept through Eli, though it was tempered by caution. The city could hold safety, or betrayal. The names in the ledger ran deep, and there was no guarantee the judge Nayeli sought hadn't already been bought. They entered quietly, disguising their trail, slipping into the city as weary travelers. The streets bustled with merchants, soldiers, and townsfolk, but beneath it Eli felt the same tension he'd carried across the desert, the sense of eyes watching, of danger lurking in plain sight. That night, in a dim boarding house, Nayeli spread the ledger on the table, its pages lit by a single candle. Eli leaned close, scanning the names, the dates, the bribes. "This book could burn half the territory down," he muttered. Nayeli's hand rested on the page. "Then let it burn, but let the fire be justice, not silence." Eli met her gaze. For the first time, he let himself believe she might be right. The next morning, they would go to the judge, place the ledger in hands they hoped were clean. But as Eli lay awake, listening to the creak of the old house, he knew Boone's words lingered like ghosts. Truth's a dangerous weapon, more dangerous than a bullet. If the ledger truly reached the right hands, it could change everything, but it might also destroy them first. And yet, for the first time in years, Eli didn't feel like a man running from life. He felt like a man finally riding toward it. Eli and Nayeli's journey shows that sometimes survival isn't enough. You need to fight for something greater, even if the cost is high. Boone's sacrifice, Nayeli's fire, and the weight of the ledger remind us that truth can be the sharpest weapon of all. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more tales of courage, betrayal, and redemption. And when you're ready, watch our next video. You'll discover another powerful journey where sacrifice meets destiny and the fight for justice becomes unforgettable.